intro cheat sheets have evaporated. Larry, I guess I'll make up an introduction for you. Last time I did that, I remember it was Mike Hardelier, and I introduced him as the worst land broker in Tucson, and I had some fun with it. I'm not going to introduce you as the worst developer. Anyway, please correct me if I'm incorrect. Larry has been in the development business for 43 years, 20 of which was in California, and 23 here in Tucson. Worked at Doucette Homes, was a director of development there for Doucette Homes, Pulte Homes, and now with Redpoint, New World Homes with Larry Leung, and now Redpoint. And he is here to tell us a little bit about the master plan community, of which the Marana Center is just a little piece, and that is called Cascada. And come on up, Larry, and tell us about that, please.
I'm here really to give you kind of what's happened at Cascada. It's a project that some people are aware of, but it's been around for a long time. We initially started accumulating parcels in this area over 20 years ago. Several of the parcels already had some zoning done to them, specific plans that were done as part of the Acacia and Northgate specific plans. And they were approved originally for about 8,000 plus homes in this area. We went back, worked with the town of Marana, and basically downzoned the property, and have now gone through a second rezoning on a portion of the property just recently in order to reposition the development because of the recession that occurred. So to kind of help with this issue, it's basically been a project that that we've spent a lot of time, mainly residential, but we've also were contacted by, it was before Vintage, it was Barclay, and we sold a portion of the property to Barclay that provided the frontage along the Twin Peaks interchange. And that was a property that basically was about 25 acres roughly, so that initiated that development for the Marana Center now that's owned by Vintage Partners. We also provided sewer system in the area, which this whole east side had no sewer prior to our starting to work on development in this area. It currently stands at about 1,450 acres. Originally it was over 1,476 acres. And we've actually developed a few portions. There's a section called Oasis Hills 1 and 2, which is just off to the east. And those lots have actually been developed. We've sold all the property to two national home builders, Richmond American and D.R. Horton. So the property has actually been almost finished. And we've also ended up acquiring additional property in the area that's not really part of Cascada, but it's currently being rezoned through a specific plan called Talavera that's directly to the east. So we're on the north and the east side of the Marana Center right now. And it's been a good area. We've really enjoyed working with the town. It's one of those projects that it's still kind of hasn't really kicked off, and the problem mainly has been the recession, but the big issue is the infrastructure. It requires so much infrastructure to be brought in from the north until we get enough interest to go ahead and bring that in. It hasn't really worked out. Most of the national home builders that have talked to us are only interested in doing 50 to 100 lots, and we need to really start and do a much bigger piece. We've actually block platted the entire Cascada site and did the first village of 430 homes plus the infrastructure for that village too. So we're just waiting for that opportunity when we get somebody that is willing to do a big enough section of it to get it started. One of the other interesting facts about Cascada is that we repositioned during the recession. We went back and did the Cascada North specific plan, and we clustered the development north of Lambert Lane, which is the road that kind of bisects through the center and then heads north. And the reason to do that and why we repositioned that particular area is initially it was estate lots that we didn't think was much of a market, but they were all lots on septic systems too, where the rest of the project was on sewer. But we felt that there was a good opportunity. We worked with the Sonoran Desert Coalition and actually created the junction where two wildlife corridors come together for eventually it connects and uses the Avra Valley. There's an old railroad spur adjacent to the Avra Valley interchange, and that underpass is what they've considered as the junction for the wildlife corridors that extend up to the Dove Mountain into the Tortolitas. So we repositioned it. We actually increased the density on the project. We're now up to 4,960 lots. Originally, it was only about 3,800 lots. So in repositioning it and adding in and the corridor, basically created that opportunity to make it a more viable project for the future. The other thing that happened with this repositioning and the area that's open space to the north, there's 320 acres, which we've used 120 of it and for comprehensive plan amendments in Pima County. So for the 4-to-1 offsite that's required, if you go above the 20%, we've actually been able to use our own property for a mitigation bank and covering properties in Pima County in the northwest. And it's also left us about 200 acres additional property to use as credits towards other developments for their offsite mitigation if they require it. So that was one of the main reasons why we went back and did that. We're still kind of waiting. We've been picking off little pieces along the way on this particular project and hoping that when the market finally does return and in good shape, that it'll sustain itself. Honestly, we don't see there hasn't been much of a market, even though Marana has been a great place and their inventory of lots is very small right now. It's just we can't afford to start a project with only 50 to 100 lots. And so we're waiting. So we'll be working on other things. We actually have, the company owns a project called Dianza, which is right by Cortero Ranch. It's 265 lots. That's going through the full plating and engineering process right now. And then the other Talavera site will be about 500 more lots. So we feel we'll probably get those items moving before we get to the rest of the project. And I wanted to give you a couple of the highlights of this project too. So far we've basically completed 130 lots. We've sold roughly the 20-some acres to Barclay, that's now the Marana Center. We've also completed a major sewer line in the area that the Marana Center is using that we have a sewer service agreement with Pima County. So we really have some control over that line. And fortunately, everything worked fine with vintage on it. And the project also includes 8 pocket parks of 2 acres or more. And then there's a regional park, a very large regional park. But it's been interesting because I've always heard this from the mayor of the town of Marana. He's always said until recently there was no cemetery in Marana. Well, in the middle of this development is an old Pascoyaki cemetery that's over 100 years old. And actually our plan is to turn that into an interpretive park and make it one of our pocket parks. So what will happen is it's currently fenced but not very well. We'll improve the fencing, create a large setback, and then take some of the archaeology items that we have from doing our archaeology for the site. We'll use those for displays around the perimeter in order to kind of talk about the heritage of the area. And so that's what our plans are with some of the money we spent on archaeology, because it's a very expensive proposition. There's also going to be a future Northwest Fire District fire station on the property, and currently we've left the site with about 590 acres of open space, of which we're going to use the 320 towards the comprehensive plan amendments in the county. So, we also have a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer 404 permit, and we're processing a modification right now to partly because we had some areas that had pygmy deed restrictions, and we've had those removed. So we're modifying our permit in order to be able to do some future development on those sites. And that's pretty much it on Cascada.
Any questions for Larry on Cascada?
I'm sorry?
Size of lots?
Oh, size of the lots, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have, our specific plan covers several different sizes. We go anywhere from like an alley loaded type product to courtyards to traditional homes. We can do high density. We have some commercial areas. We have 95 acres roughly of commercial within a development, of which some of that could even be podium style. We can do just about pretty much anything. The only thing on the commercial, we're limited to heavy industrial type use. That's the only option we can't do. But we can do office, residential. Most of the interest we've seen are in traditional lots, but we have certain areas where we have that flexibility to do the traditional lots for the home builders, but we are going to have to eventually do some higher density type products.
Marana used to have this mantra that residential lots could not be smaller than 6,000 square feet for a single family residential. Were you able to get that?
Yes, actually, our smallest lot sizes, if we were to look at the alley loads, they're probably about 3,800 square feet. We also have the ability to go to all two-story in most of the development, except for traditional lots. So any of the small lot areas can actually go all two-story. But I think the reason we felt Marana was really good too is because of those kind of issues. We were able to work through those and be able to come up with a specific plan. Once we have the specific plan, then we're able to do and follow through with different kinds of zonings and lot sizes. It's not the norm for Marana. Yes.
Did you say the pocket parks were 2 acres?
Yes.
That's a pretty good size for a pocket park. Are they going to be city maintained?
No.
HOA?
No, they'll be HOA maintained. There's one district park, or actually two, but the combined acreage is about 50-some acres. That's part of our detention facility, but also it'll be a major park for Marana.
And that one will be city operated?
Yes, that one will.
So will you have a master homeowners association that's responsible for all
Yes.
the pocket parks?
Right. Right, and all the roads will be public, except for some of the small lot product. If they end up going with private streets, basically alleys and things like that, those will be private roads maintained by the HOA.
What's the total size of the development?
It's, originally it was up to 1,476 acres. So we're down to about 1,450 roughly.
Larry, thank you.